going on. The original immigrant was really bad at it. You stuck to your principles and you. The Michael-Ignatieff view is that one establishes firmly that one does not, in any circumstances, sanction torture, but that if you knew you had in front of you the one man who had the plans and the means to blow up all London, and the question was whether you stuck to your principles and didn't use the thumbscrew, or did use it and save London, you would have to do it, but would be forgiven. Anthropologist Jeremy Swift, though, who has one of the most subtle minds I know, says no. If it was ever the right thing to do, the only honest thing you can say is, in some circumstances, I would. I don't know who's right on that one. Until now, people like me, who have lived in America, have been inspired by its ideals, have close friends and a son there, have sympathized with them for having a Bush government that allowed things like Guantanamo, and so let them in for the world's obloquy. Well, now it's us, who thought, hoped anyway, that such things were just not British. So what is being British? It has nothing to do with knowing about Agincourt, the Corn Laws, or the Kings and Queens of England, since half of our allegedly educated young Britons born here don't, and certainly nothing whatever to do with cricket or I'm a Bolivian. For me, it comes down to two things. To be British, you must speak English and respect the law. Note I don't say obey the law, as too many British obviously don't much of the time. And of course there are differences between Scottish law and English. But even burglars and swindlers still reckon they'll be hauled up in front of British courts, subject to one or another form of British law, with all its safeguards, achieved bit by bit over centuries. Whatever the minor discrepancies, it's a question of what you consider to be the law. Not thinking women should be stoned to death if they sleep with the wrong man. Not thinking you can get away with murder if you belong to the right church. Not maybe thinking Scientology is all you know and all you need to know. And certainly not thinking Sharia law that would more or less negate all the rights that 2 centuries of British women have fought for should supersede ours. Which stands for being the sort of people who don't pull people's toenails out, who obey the Geneva Conventions, who at least have some idea of fairness and honour. So where does speaking English come into all this? Language, too, is a vital part of the interface between those who grew up here and those who didn't, the others, the outsiders. And it's another problem we share with America. They have required those becoming citizens to learn English for very good reason. The Constitution and all it implied was formed in English, and if you wanted to uphold it, benefit from it, you had to learn it. A friend of mine had met a man who, as a child, had always thought that English was something that declined with age, like sight or hearing. Because he spoke it perfectly, his mother pretty well, but his grandmother, the original immigrant, was really bad at it. At one point, the flood of Spanish-speaking immigrants in California was such that they decided children should be taught initially in their mother tongue, Spanish. After quite a few years, it was the Spanish-speaking parents who asked for this kind of privilege to be stopped, as they realized that the children of Oriental immigrants got ahead far faster. They weren't hampered by having to learn the national tongue as a second language. I know a lot of liberally minded people would say that requiring English is restrictive, makes things hard for the less brainy or more elderly or whatever, and that it's more civilized to accept that we have a lot of languages spoken here, and it's only fair to interpret for them. I absolutely don't agree for 2 reasons. The first is that if you don't understand English, you can't understand what's going on. You're second-class citizens and can't effectively take part in any public debate. You can, of course, have the news and views interpreted for you, but who by? The local mullah? The head of the household, who may be very happy to have his wife unable to know anything he doesn't tell her. It reminds me of one of the prosecution's remarks in the famous Lady Chatterley trial. Would you like your wife or your servants to read this book? Your 7-year-old son, who has learned English at school, can interpret for you. But do you want him to be the one who tells your medical troubles to the doctor? A few years back, the winner of a prize in medical communication was a pair who went around lecturing about getting through to difficult groups, deaf people, people with learning difficulties, people who didn't speak English. They had a marvellously telling film of an Asian woman consulting the doctor about pain in intercourse using her cousin as interpreter, who instead said she had irregular periods because that was more seemly, so the doctor prescribed for that. And restaurant inspectors, I'm told, have given up using the children to relay their criticisms to the owners of mucky ethnic kitchens, as the kids don't want to say anything that might upset Papa. There is no going back on the single fact that tribes and races and nations are now totally intertwined. The conflicts are not about to go away. To my mind, it doesn't matter what your meal times are, what clothes you wear, whether you keep birthdays or saints' days or name days, what songs you sing, whether you think the world came from outer space, was made in 6 days, or sits on the back of an elephant. The nation that now has chicken curry madras as its favourite dish can absorb almost anything, but only if it hangs on to the essentials that make it what it is, our language and above all our law. It can be improved, made more enlightened, stripped of bureaucratic inessentials, made fairer to both sexes, adapt to changing conditions, but keep its essential premise that all are equal before the law, not, as George Orwell's pigs in the book 1984 had it, that some are more equal than others. Remember the exchange in the play A Man for All Seasons? Cranmer likens the law to trees. I would cut down every law in England to get at the devil, he says. And Thomas More says, and when you have cut down every law, and the devil comes after you, where will you hide? Exactly.
A Point of View was presented by Catherine Whitehorn and produced by Clive Brill. It was a Pacificus production for BBC Radio 4. Well, the Friday edition is on the untold, known as Bit.
What would you do? I would burst into tears. Not everyone is like that. This is not the perfect set I expected to find here. But in a side street in town, I do see the austere side of Jainism. Wandering monks and nuns are seen by the faithful as having achieved the highest state of Jain ideal. 2 nuns have been fasting here for the duration of the monsoon, and today they are breaking their fast.